If you're a pilot and you want to retire early, this is the video for you. I'm going to go over a real case study showing actual figures of someone who is a pilot that we work with who wants to retire early. Now, pretend you're not a pilot. It's still going to apply to you because the figures are similar, but this is mainly going to be using what pilots actually have to understand, specifically a Delta pilot, because that is the case study that I'm using today. Now, I make concepts and videos that hopefully resonate with you around tax planning, around early retirement, around healthcare, around estate planning and insurance, and all these things that really move the needle in a big way for your retirement. You're never going to see me make a video, here's the best new credit card, and here's a travel hack. That's just not my thing. So I want to be very clear with you ahead of time what I do and what I don't do. Now, I love getting to do this, and I'm going to show you right now. My name's Ari. I'm a certified financial planner, and I'm the host of the Early Retirement Podcast. Finally, I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Roth. Now, check this out. This is a case study showing a couple. You can see here, they are 51 and 52, a child who is 20 years old. Now, you can see here, have invested very well. They have $3.8 million. 1.9 is in a traditional 401k. 900,000 is in a superhero account. 800,000 is in a DCP, deferred compensation plan, and 200,000 is in a Roth account. Now, property is worth 1.7. They have a mortgage of 510,000. If these are not your exact numbers, that's because it's not you. You can use the same exact figures and go put it in for your own retirement. This software is available in the description of this episode. So if you want to follow along and put your numbers in at the same time, awesome. If you want to do it after this video, also all good. Now, I actually went ahead and created, before I'm going to show you all these amazing trade-offs, what you should think about if you're a pilot with a one-page plan. So what you're going to see here, obviously, I want you to tailor this if you're a pilot with Delta specifically to your actual age, your years of service, and your goals. But pretend just for a second you're 54, you've been with Delta for 27 years, and you're retiring next year. Pretend you want to spend $150,000 a year, about 12 a month. That's after taxes adjusted for inflation, and these are your assets. $2 million in a 401k, 800 in deferred comp, 200 Roth, and then you have a $300,000 health account. So this is what we're going to call the bridge plan. So pretend you retire at 55. Well, how do we get till 65? The first thing that's going to come to your head is probably medical. How do we account for medical? Well, what we need to do is we make sure that we're keeping our income at a certain level to qualify for a subsidy, or we're intentionally going to consider what's called a Roth conversion instead. So first thing is we need income. Where's that going to come from? Well, we can choose. We can have it come from our Roth. We probably don't want to do that because that's our best account for long-term growth. It's tax-free forever. Let's hold off there. RHA, that's for healthcare. So I like the idea of using that, but right now I'm only thinking about their entire income, not just the health side. They have a 401k and they have deferred comp. Ooh, I kind of like this deferred comp because this is basically going to be paid out. It's income that you received that you elected not to take in, because if you're a pilot making a healthy income, you'd rather defer that in the future when you're in a lower tax bracket. So you can see here that defer payout, that's over 10 years at $80,000 a year. It's taxed as ordinary income. So it's as if you just made more money, but pretend you're making $500,000 a year. You probably don't want to take that income if you can defer it and pay way less in taxes. $80,000 a year, that's a way lower tax bill. Now, the reality is it's going to grow, but I'm just assuming it doesn't for example's sakes here. Now, let's pretend you wanted to draw $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Where should we do that from? Well, we talked about using what's called a taxable account. The taxable account, that's this account right here. That's the superhero account. Why? Because you pay capital gains on that. In terms of Roth, that's tax-free. We probably don't want to touch that. The 401k, let's pretend this person was a big spender, like $300,000 a year. I would say we should probably pull more from the brokerage account, but they do have an option to use what's called a rule of 55, where you can access your 401k even if you're not 59 and a half. You still have to pay taxes, but there's no penalties. So let's pretend this person didn't have these assets, and there was no deferred comp, and there was no Roth, and there was no brokerage account. And they're like, Ari, I'm retiring at 55 no matter what you tell me. This rule of 55 would be very helpful for them because this is what's going to allow them to actually withdraw income, or if not, they'd pay huge penalties and wait until 59 and a half. So why are we thinking about it this way? We want to stay under the 22% marginal bracket. The reason we're saying this bridge plan, we say bridge, people say mind the gap when you're in the UK. I know that was a great British accent right there. So that was just, I'll do that as my second career. But in all seriousness here, the bridge plan, we do need to bridge the gap until we want to touch our 401k. So we could take all 800,000 in 1 year and pay 50% taxes if you're in California, and now you netted 400, or you could take 80,000 every year for 10 years, in which case, let's pretend you net 700 of that. That's way more, applicable. So this is why we are looking at it of how do we stay at a low tax bracket, and how do we use that healthcare account to cover premiums until Medicare at age 65. Now, investment strategy, this is a real basic assumption. This is just a one-page plan. When we're talking about investment strategies, what we're thinking about is what's the right equity mix, what's the right bonds to cash mix, when should we rebalance, how much cash, safe money. When we say safe money, by the way, the safe money, this is so easily confused in our new world of, hey, what's safe, what's unsafe. The reality is you could argue it's unsafe to walk outside because you could get hit by a car. But you could also argue it's unsafe to stay inside and never leave and get sunlight. So it's a silly argument. The point here is we're thinking about what assets, instead of using the word safe, because I don't like that word, what assets are there for us in the short term? Short term, less volatile assets like bonds, like cash. Equities are more volatile, but over the long term grow more. So what we want to do is understand what's the right mix. Well, the biggest mistake I see, especially with pilots, not because of pilots' competency, but because they're busy, they just don't have the capacity to look into things. In the same way, I don't have the capacity to look into, how we should land the plane. So you can see here, this Roth account, I see way too many people who don't have all equities in this account. Now, it doesn't make sense to have all equities for every person, but if you are the person that says, I can stomach volatility, it doesn't bother me, I just want to do what's optimal for my plan to make the most money, this is an account you're probably not going to touch for a very long time. That's the account you'll touch after all of these are probably completely, destroyed. I don't like the word destroyed. I was trying to think of a word, eliminated. You've spent through it all, and a good word didn't come to mind there. So you can see here, destroyed just sounds harsh because it's not destroyed. Used, that's a better word. Now, 200,000 in this Roth account, that is an account you want it growing tax-free forever. And that's what it will do. So you want it to be growing as much as possible because you'll never pay taxes. A superhero account, this account, you pay taxes in the year, which means if you have capital gains or dividends or interest, you pay taxes. So we probably don't want this nearly as volatile because what if this 900,000 was all equities and went down 50%? Well, now a year later, this was your spending on travel for the next 10 years. And that just went from 900 to 400,000, 450, 500, because it was invested too aggressively. So generally you want to have your overall mix and then go invest differently inside of each account. So that's a common mistake that we'll see. Now, going on here, in terms of tax plan, this is the biggest value, to be honest. Understanding what's the best drawdown. Do we take from a brokerage account and then deferred comp and then 401k and then Roth? All of this always changes, but it's something we want to be aware of. How are we harvesting gains or losses in a brokerage account? Watch out for IRMAA brackets. For those who are unfamiliar, so this is this exact plan. Let's click tax plan for a second. What the heck is IRMAA? Oh, IRMAA. So IRMAA, this is what are called Medicare surcharges, premiums that you're going to have to pay, whether you want to or not. So you can see here, there's 4 different categories. I'm going to zoom in for you. Ordinary income. That's as if you made more money. A bunch of key components that I'll explain, capital gains, and then Medicare premiums. What if we clicked on Medicare premiums? So what you can see here, I'm going to hover over here for a second. It's not perfect, but if you see my face in the lower left, right above my head, right about there, you're going to see a little orange dot that says $353 and a green dot that says $88 a month. You see how those show 0? That's because you don't pay any of this stuff until actually Medicare kicks in. and it's based off a 2-year look back. So what's going to happen is if your income was $278,625, like above my head right now, well, that doesn't bother you today, but in 2 years, you will be paying, you can see here, $88 a month or $353 a month. And that number next to it, so let's just take the green number to start. You see how it says $88 a month, and then next to it, it says $366,684. That's saying if you were to not do any planning at all, that's the amount that you're going to be paying over the course of your lifetime. And it's significant. And you can see that 300, that's per spouse. So these are numbers that people don't like. They want to decrease these numbers. You can see here, when would no IRMAA apply? Well, if we were able to stay within a certain income. So these numbers, let me make sure I'm crystal clear so you guys can see this here. I'm trying to zoom in more. The 385, the 307, what are those numbers? Those numbers are your income in that given year. So I explained it poorly just a second ago. I want to make sure you guys get this. So over my head right now, you're going to see a little orange dot. It says $353 a month. It also says $551,000. I know you don't have $551,000 of income. You know how I know that? That's not, you're retired. You don't want that income coming in. These are income brackets that are going to force you to pay, when you're up in that amount of income, $353 per month. I don't want you to have to pay all of this amount in taxes. That's crazy. So another way of looking at it, because I don't think that was super clear, and I always am trying to gauge when I'm explaining something, did that hit or did that not hit? Because I'm a very transparent person. Here's another way of looking at it. Let's pretend you were retired this year and you're a pilot. And your 2023 MAGI, which is what I say for income, modified adjusted gross income. Let's pretend I'm retired and I'm pulling from my deferred comp, which increases my income, from taxable account and a 401k so I can live. Well, pretend my income's right in this bracket here. Pretend my income's $250, okay? If I'm $250, I'm going to have to pay another $74 a month and another $13 a month for Part D. So that's Part B and D, and my spouse has to do the same. But if my income keeps rising and I'm doing Roth conversions or other fancy stuff, you could easily be paying this amount every single month. So the truth is, this is something that you should be spending a lot of time in, because if you don't, there's a chance you're spending legitimately $10,000 plus every single year unnecessarily. The Roth conversions, this is the big argument. Roth conversions are awesome. So we're going to put this back to ordinary income taxes. What this is saying is if you were to do Roth conversions, you can see it can certainly add a lot of value. So what this software is calculating is it's saying, hey, what if you make a lot of money, you're 51, and then you retire at 55? Well, now your income's really low. So let's do a bunch of Roth conversions, fill up this green, because in the future, we're going to be in a way higher tax bracket, which we want to avoid. So when you do Roth conversions, it's going to add more money. But there becomes a point where it adds less money, where there's people that want to do Roth conversions so badly that it's actually better to do nothing at all. So this is just an example. If you have a heavy pre-tax balance like this right here, $2 million, you should certainly be considering it. Healthcare, make sure you're planning appropriately. If you have an HSA or an HRA, this is just an estimate of $1,200. The reality is we have clients that pay that for a couple. Now, whether you want a silver, gold, or platinum plan, speak to us, speak to healthcare experts. This is what we help with. And then these are just some Delta specific notes. Now, if you're not a Delta pilot, these won't apply, but it might be interesting either way. So choose for a deferred comp, whether you're Delta or not. Generally, a multi-year payout is better than one big year because of tax. An RHA is cool, not offered often, but this is only for IRS approved medical costs. Travel benefits, from what my clients are saying, it's likely reduced or there's none unless you're over 60 and 20 years of service. Yes, rule of 55. If you need to touch your 401k, you can. Then just some other things to think about: travel, hobbies, estate plan, long-term care. Obviously, there's a lot, but this is just a case study. If you're a pilot trying to get a sense of, okay, what am I working with? I encourage you, go use the software, see what you're on track for. You can really quickly, in a few minutes, get a sense of, hey, am I on track? How much money is projected to be at the end? What should I know? What should I not know? Final thing, if you look at my screen here, you can see here's a couple they've done really well. If they want to spend $10,000 a month, you can see they're still on track to have 10 million at the end. Maybe they don't want 10 million. So what if they spent 15,000 a month or 180,000 a year and retired at 56? Yeah, you can see there's way less dollars, but maybe their goal is not to have 15 million at the end. So just go play around with your own numbers, see what you're on track for. And then finally, this is what we do. We work with pilots and lawyers and doctors and all sorts of people who have invested really well that now want to make the most out of their hard-earned money, and it's what we love to do. So if you want to retire early, if you want a custom strategy, if you go to our website, Root Financial, you can, 1, click this button here to see if you're a fit and start working with us. 2, under the Resources tab, there's an FAQ button. If you click on that, you'll see a bunch of common questions that were asked. This will probably answer a lot of your questions in terms of what is it we cost, what are our fees, how do we justify the fee, what role do I play with clients, who will you be actually working with, what services do we offer, the retirement, the management, the tax, the estate, the insurance, really everything so that you can enjoy your retirement and you don't have a new job. This is what we love to do. So I encourage you to reach out if it's of interest. Thanks, guys.